Hi guys, welcome back to another video. I am Lemon Cat Podfic, and today I'm going to be recording United Alliance Institute by Kitty Cat Me over on AO3. Today is chapter 25, Cleaning Up His Mess. Just a reminder, this does contain graphic depictions of violence and major character death. Summary: Izuku continues to clean up his father's lies. Izuku stepped off the podium, grinning at the camera that followed his movements before he disappeared back behind the curtain. Yamada was by his side in an instant, handing him a water bottle. "You good, kid?" he said, and Izuku paused from opening the water bottle to raise an eyebrow at him. He stuttered slightly, moving his braid over his shoulder in a nervous mannerism. "Sorry, I didn't mean to." Izuku chuckled, shaking his head. "No worries, just don't go using that in front of others." He grinned at the man, who gave an odd look back. That was fine. Izuku had gotten used to them at this point. "What other meetings do I have on the agenda?" he asked, and Yamada hummed, glancing down at his phone. Izuku's lip curled in disgust at the electronics, but he said nothing. Apparently his father hadn't been as opposed to them as Izuku had been led to believe. "We have a meeting with the Prime Minister of Foreign Affairs in 4 hours. The train ride will take around 2, but you should have something to eat beforehand." Izuku sighed, rubbing his hands together as they headed for the exit. It was only him and Yamada here, though he knew that the team his mother had arranged to tail them was also there. Not to mention the others she had to edit and spread the live news coverage that he had just given. "Did my father do all this? All the press conferences and meetings?" he asked, sliding open the door leading to their car. Another thing Izuku had not gotten used to. Yamada chuckled. "Not quite. He preferred to make others do it for him. He was content to do the work he found interesting." He went to open the door for Izuku before Izuku held up a hand. He turned, letting his exposed prosthetic rub against his good leg. He made eye contact with him before Yamada even saw the man. "Trench coat," he said, nodding to the man who stared at them. The entire street was clear, most likely due to the people his mom had hired, save for the man with the cropped hair and brown trench coat. Yamada immediately stepped back. The clipboard sat on top of the car as he drew his gun. Izuku sighed, pushing his hand down gently. "Midoriya," Trenchcoat said, the words dripping with disgust. "Nice leg." Izuku raised an eyebrow, crossing his prosthetic over his good leg. "Thanks to your boyfriend." Trenchcoat's eyes flared in anger, and Izuku couldn't help but chuckle. "He gave it to you in agreement that you would help us, not that you would betray us and kill your father yourself." Izuku rolled his eyes, readjusting his stance. "I did not kill him. Surely you know this." He grinned at the man, who didn't get any closer. Yamada still had his gun drawn, after all. "Unless you like to ignore evidence." Trenchcoat glared, running a hand through his hair. "Please, we all know how easily evidence can be fabricated when you're smart." Izuku grinned, putting a hand to his chest. "Aw, are you calling me smart? That's so nice of you." "Midoriya, we will still come for you. The entire institute that shouldn't exist," he warned, and Izuku could hear Yamada's small sound of annoyance. "You too, Hisashi Yamada. We offered you a deal." Yamada looked to Izuku, who shrugged before he spoke. "I don't need anything from you, just like I didn't back then," he snapped at Trenchcoat. The man sneered, and Izuku laughed again. "Actually, Trenchcoat," Izuku started, before the man cut him off. "Tsukiyuchi. Detective Tsukiyuchi. I'm the one who saw those bodies you faked." Izuku shrugged. "Anyways, Trenchcoat," he said, getting a pointed glare from the man. "There's something I would actually like your help on. Since you want to claim that you're so much better than me, here's your chance to prove it." He turned away from the man, and Yamada unlocked the door so he wouldn't have to mess with the electronic key fob. He grabbed the file he had in the back of it, tapping the many papers against his hand as he stood up. "I won't help, Midoriya." "Look," Izuku said with a sigh, "if a name is all that's bothering you, feel free to use my mother's maiden name, Hikisuga. I may hold my father's last name and his legacy now, but it's not a mold I'm going to stay in." He walked towards the man, and Yamada followed slowly behind him, the gun still slightly raised. Trenchcoat took a step back, his hand raising to push his trenchcoat aside. Izuku quickly shoved Yamada's hand down as he fired, sending the bullet into the concrete instead of the man. "Both of you, knock it off," he said with annoyance as Yamada recocked the gun. Trenchcoats' was now drawn, but he at least seemed rattled enough by the gunshot to not fire as well. "Izuku," Yamada said in warning, but quieted when Izuku shot him a glare. "Look, my father was an asshole. I may be his son, but I can differ from him. Give me a year, and if you still decide you want to kill me, fine," he laughed. "Try your luck and see how far you get." Trenchcoat stared at him for a moment longer before he accepted the file Izuku handed him. "What is this?" "Some things I need the police to look into. I have too much to worry about with taking control back and switching my operations." He waved his hand in the air, dismissing that train of thought. "Now, these will guide you to some less than legal dealings my father had." He tapped the file before Trenchcoat pulled it back. "Of course, I know better than to ask you for the favor of keeping Yue's name out of it, though this information is redacted for that." Trenchcoat scoffed. "Please, how are we supposed to do anything with redacted information?" Izuku rolled his eyes. "Do it or don't. I thought a detective on the bench could use the easy win." Trenchcoat huffed, and Izuku turned away from him. Yamada hesitantly followed, but Izuku knew Trenchcoat wouldn't try anything against him. After all, he could feel the watchful gaze of a certain early Quirk user. Her purple hair flashed away as he turned to grin up at her. The next step was going to be the worst for his reputation. He had spent the night before he departed for the mainland, talking it over with the people he considered his advisors for now. Yamada, his mother, Nezu, Recovery Girl, and Usagi-yama. They all headed up different parts of the operation his father had created, and they weren't loyal to Hisashi. As much as he wished to return to the Institute and speak to the trainees, he would allow them more rest and food to regain strength. Yamada had assured him they would be fine, so now his mission was more or less simple. Easy, yet devastating to his reputation as a powerhouse of court control in the world. He shook his head, knocking gently on the door. He stepped back, nodding at Yamada, who stood just out of view of the door. It creaked open, Magne's face coming into view. Her eyes crinkled before she grinned, laughing. "Holy shit, is that you, little green?" she asked, and he saw the odd look Yamada gave him. He ignored the man, laughing instead in an awkward manner. "Sorry, Magne. Things happened and—" "Izuku Midoryia," a voice boomed from inside, and Izuku couldn't help the true grin that appeared on his face. Magne's eyebrows dipped back into confusion. Come in, little green. Boss and the mutant you liked are—" Izuku didn't need any more information, strolling into the room easily. More people than just Boss and Spiral Whip filled the room, Izuku's eyes quickly looking over them. "I hope you don't mind that I brought my own friend," Izuku said to Boss, who regarded him over the edge of his glass. Magne made a noise of surprise as Yamada shouldered into the room, standing at his tall height above Izuku. Mustard went to say something before Boss just laughed. "Not at all, young Midoriya." He waved his hand before he set the drink on the table. "After all, it would be rather improper for the head of the world's biggest Quirk Institute to arrive without a bodyguard." He went to grab something, and Izuku opened his fist, holding his palm to the side so Yamada could see it. No one made a sound other than Magne moving over to Mustard, so he assumed the blonde had not drawn his gun. Boss grabbed the remote, flicking on the news quickly. "I'm surprised I didn't piece it together before," he said with a small shrug. "Sloppy of me." Izuku nodded, grinning. "Suppose it was, old man," he said easily, and he saw all the people in the room, familiar and not, flinch at how he said it. Boss just chuckled, though, taking another drink from his glass. "I guess I had an unfair advantage in my earlier fight." "Considering you trained my girl?" he asked, the last word sounding like a soft coo. Izuku physically repressed a shiver as Boss's finger came up to graze where Spiral Whip's ear should be. "That does seem a bit unfair," he admitted, dropping his hand. "Are you here to garner favor with me, like your old man had?" Izuku grinned, pulling out a bar stool and sitting down. He shifted, leaning back onto the counter as he stretched out his prosthetic leg. Magne shifted slightly, and Izuku smiled at her. "Courtesy of that little mishap I made. Had a cut just under the knee." He hummed before he turned to lean on his fist. His arm rested on the counter, and Yamada shifted to stand beside him. Surprised you both made it out all right. Magne grinned. We're tough, little green. Been through worse. Izuku hummed, dropping his hand to drum on the bar. He could see the slight tick of Boss's jaw at being ignored, but he ignored it. He had everyone's attention now. Tell me, if I was to ask you about your personal feelings to Boss over there, you wouldn't have any qualms with me, I don't know, killing him? Magne's eyes went wide, and Izuku felt the atmosphere shift around them. He laughed, throwing his head back as he did so. Midoriya, Boss said, his words strained. I'm sure you aren't an idiot, so I'll make myself clear here. Before he could speak, Izuku stopped laughing, standing up. No, let me make myself clear, he said, taking a step towards the man. The people around got up, save for Magne and Mustard at the bar. A small shake of the head from Boss, and they all froze. Izuku sighed. This man wasn't as smart as he had been led to believe if he didn't see Izuku as a threat. You find joy in destroying a beautiful thing for the sake of your own spoiled ego. Now see, my father, he put up with it. Who doesn't want a few more bucks in their pocket and a friend in the underground boogeyman? He sighed, pausing in front of the man. Boss raised an eyebrow. Make your point, kid. I'm growing weary of this. Izuku nodded. Certainly, he said with a grin. Your services are no longer required. He went to pull his gun from its holster, but by the time he had gotten it out, the man was choking, his eyes already bloodshot and wide. Yamada, Izuku said, though it wasn't needed as he heard the shots and sounds of fighting ring out from behind him. He backed up a few paces, turning to Spiral Whip. Nejire, he said, and her steady gaze narrowed slightly. She dropped her hands, and he watched the small twirls of wind leave her grasp. Boss dropped to the floor with a loud thunk, and Izuku didn't bother wasting a bullet on the man. I'm here to bring you back to the Institute, he said, and she raised an eyebrow. Why? She asked, the words broken and small from disuse. To kill me. Izuku laughed, shaking his head. No, I know I'm no match for you. Quirk or not, you could kill me here and be done with me. He tipped his head. However, I have something you must want. Information on where to find Sun Eater and Lemillion. I need some new trainers now that I had to kill the ones loyal to my father. She scoffed, running a hand through her hair. It wasn't in an easy or relaxed gesture, but rather a test to see Izuku's reaction. He just raised an eyebrow, leaning back on the couch he knew was behind him. Warm blood covered his elbows, but he paid it no mind. Too broke to buy me back? Izuku tisked, shaking his head. No, I'm also under the impression that you are not an object to be sold. It took me too many years to see that, and for that I will apologize. You are free to leave this bar, but you are branded. He rubbed at his own numbers, where he knew he could never remove them. I can't guarantee your safety on the mainland, or that you will ever find the other two. Her lip curled up in annoyance, and he turned his back on her to return to Yamada. He sighed, wiping the blood off the man's face with his sleeve. Less splatter next time? He asked, though he chuckled slightly as the man groaned. You try against 6 people coming at you to avoid splatter, kid. Izuku rolled his eyes before he paused. 6? He asked, before he turned to face the other 2 he had counted. I assume my little tease earlier wouldn't stop you from attacking me or Yamada, he observed. Why didn't you? Huh? Magne asked, glancing around the area. What the fuck just happened? Izuku laughed, shaking his head. You 2 are more than welcome to come with me. You aren't much of a soldier, but I suppose I could find a role for you if you wish. Mustard looked to Magne, wiping his blood-covered face on his arm. Izuku turned back to the last girl. Are you coming, Nejire Hado? Izuku bit the end of his pen, scanning over the list of representatives his father had worked with. While he knew there was a full list on the laptop Yamada had insisted he take with him, the dumb device was a pain to navigate. Every time he hit one button to do something, something else happened. Not to mention how goddamn long it took to find buttons to write anything, because the order they were in was just dumb. Coffee? Yamada asked, and Izuku looked up. The blonde held out a steaming cup of something that smelled way too strong. He shook his head quickly, turning back to the paper and his file of notes on each. Yamada sighed. You're going to work yourself too much. Izuku chuckled, letting the pen dangle out of his mouth as he flipped through more papers. The car lurched forward, and he groaned, bracing himself until it settled. It was worse than the goddamn boat had been. Once I figure out where the rest of the level 5s got sold to, I'll rest, he muttered. Yamada hummed. Sure you will, he said, with a shake of his head. Izuku paid it no mind, going back 3 pages to hesitate over Night Eye's name. Did he take any other contracts? He asked, tapping the name. Surely my father would have had more red flags had he not. We had a large class this last year, and Izuku, Yamada said, and Izuku immediately quieted. He took 1 level 5, I know that much, but this man... He flipped a few pages, pausing on one. He took more of them. He supplies a government organization, so you aren't going to get them back. Izuku scanned the name, his eyebrows furrowing. Rikuya Yotsubashi. Isn't that the man we have a meeting with tomorrow down in Tokyo? Surely the level 5s didn't stay here in Japan. Yamada shrugged. I can't say for sure. Many probably didn't. I know that Russia has been longtime allies with UA and a few other notable powers. He flipped through more papers, pulling a name to the top. Timothy Agpar, he said, tapping it. He will be your best friend on the American side. They've also bought quite a few, though their level 5s are dwindling, given the war over there. Izuku hummed, taking the paper behind his. And Kathleen Bates? He asked, scanning her image. She doesn't look familiar. Yamada shook his head. She stopped doing business with your father a few years back. She recruits from the Shields agency now. Izuku groaned, running a hand down his face. Right, them, he muttered, his leg bouncing as the car finally slowed to a stop at their destination. They're on my list, right? To deal with? Yamada nodded. You should probably take a break before going over there. You're getting too trigger-happy. Izuku glared at him over his shoulder, and Yamada grinned. What is this stop for again? Izuku asked, collecting the papers into one pile. The agency you spoke to the Prime Minister about 2 days ago. This is a briefing to plan the logistics of it. He left the car, and Izuku watched him walk around. Before he could open it, Izuku did, hopping out quickly. I can handle myself, he joked, grinning up at the man. Yamada rolled his eyes, taking the bag from Izuku. Keep your hands clear so you don't drop the computer. Izuku rolled his eyes, following Yamada towards the door. Paper doesn't need to worry about being dropped, he mumbled. Has he arrived? Izuku asked, and Yamada hesitated in his step before he continued. Izuku grinned, not needing Yamada's nod to confirm it. Not when he could already hear the commotion in the professional-looking building they were approaching. Yamada opened the door, and the talking grew louder without the muffling barrier. He took over walking in front of Yamada, his eyes scanning the many people he had asked to be here. He supposed he should first apologize for the late notice, but before he could speak, the most controversial one noticed him. Izuku, Nezu said, clapping his paws together as he set down the drink he had been holding. The others all spun around to face him, despite the fact they weren't quiet before talking about Nezu. The Chimera had chosen to keep the acronym as a name, though he had asked Izuku not to inform anyone of the meaning. Izuku could at least do that much for him, since he was the reason the Chimera was as scarred as he was. Luckily, it looked like the manual tear tracks they had added in the final surgery were working, as the black eyes looked shiny and healthy. He shook himself out of his thoughts, nodding his head in greeting. Nezu, it's good to see you out of that room. How does it feel to return to the mainland? He asked, tipping his head slightly as he grinned. Nezu matched it, a mischievous glint to those eyes Izuku had once hated. Quite nice, though I suspect your other guests might be confused as to why an animal is here without an owner. He said it loudly as he walked alongside Izuku to the front of the room. Lips curled up in disgust, and Izuku couldn't help but laugh again. He turned his attention to the people, and they quickly glanced away. Whether it was due to him or his father's memory was still to be decided. Ah, but they misunderstand. You are your own master, he said easily, and Nezu grinned at him as he stepped up onto the small platform overlooking everyone. He stood to face them all, crossing his metal leg over his other so it was on display. Now, thank you all for attending. Let's move on to the business I called you here for, integrating Quirk users into our society. Izuku bounded down the steps 2 at a time. He should have turned to the advisors and important people to debate what he had just gone on about for the past hour, but instead he turned to Yamada. "What's wrong?" he asked, crossing his arms. "You got that look on your face halfway into the talk." Yamada shook his head quickly, running a hand through his hair. It got stuck on his braid, and he hissed in pain, pulling it free. It can wait," he said quickly, sticking that accursed phone into his pocket. Izuku tipped his head slightly, his smile turning tight. Yamada's eyes went wide before he sighed. "Usagi-yama found something." Izuku raised an eyebrow. "She found Aizawa, alive." "Oh," Izuku said softly, not having to ask for clarification on who Aizawa was. "Cancel the rest of my meetings after I speak to Yotsubashi tomorrow. We're going back early." He spun on his heel, going to face the rest of the humans. Another thing to add to his list.